So, welcome everyone. I want to thank you all for deciding to be here today at the first event to kind of kick off Femme4STEM. My name is Ria Manimaran, and I'm one of the two founders of this project. In partnership with the Ronald Reagan Citizen Scholar Institute, Femme4STEM is actually a CSI project that my partner Kayla Lim and I have worked pretty hard for the past few months to kind of bring a certain vision to life. So, working hand in hand with high school students to create positive societal impact, Royal High School's Citizen Scholar Program encourages students to design a project that will improve the lives of those in their community and further beyond. So, we decided what better way to celebrate our love for involvement between women in STEM than to host this event during the first week of International Women's History Month, March. So that's why Femme4STEM was born with these values in mind, introducing students, especially young women, to existing women professionals and providing a forum for questions with no limits. So without further ado, we'd like to introduce each of the featured panelists for today so we can all get to know them just a little bit better.
So first off, I would like to start with Susie Buckman. Susie is currently the Senior Product Development Lead Engineer at Spin Master Toys, producing consumer products. Prior to her current job, Susie was a mechanical engineer in both the aerospace and biomedical industries, as well as a product engineer at Mattel, working on Hot Wheels and action figures. She also has experience in the education sector, being a STEAM lab teacher at a nonprofit art school for 2 years and teaching 8th grade science for a year.
All right, so our second panelist for today is Joan Clark. Currently, Mrs. Clark is a computer science and math teacher at Royal High School. However, some of her prior work experience includes working in design and new product development for 17 years, working as the design lead and project engineer for kitchen faucets at Price Pfister, and principal reliability and design assurance engineer for new products for medical devices at Medtronic. However, I want to extend just a special thank you to Mrs. Clark for actually being the project advisor for Femme4STEM. Without all of her advice and constant support over the past few months, Kayla and I would not have been able to bring this project to life.
No worries. Thank you.
So the topic for today's event is getting your foot in the door. What exactly does that mean? Well, with any career, entry-level employment often puts people at a crossroads. Either you maintain a static position or continue to progress further in your career. Oftentimes, remaining stagnant happens whether you want it to happen or not, where higher positions don't seem to open up or you can't seem to find a way to get a leg up on others. That's where tactics like networking and cultivation of leadership, as well as personal skills, come in handy. So before we start off our interview portion of the event, I want to emphasize that we really want to hear the opinions of everyone watching this webinar right now. We have the Q&A function enabled, so throughout the event, send in your questions and comments. Emphasis on the comments because we'd love to hear your thoughts. After the interview round is over, we'll address everything that is piled up in the Q&A box. All right, to begin, I'd like to ask the panelists this question. Did you know that you wanted to pursue STEM prior to receiving higher education?
So you want to go, Joan?
Sure, I'll go. Absolutely. I feel like I was born to be an engineer, to be honest. But when I was a junior in high school, I was debating between engineer and computer science. And so I did engineering for 17 years, and now I'm doing computer science. So full circle.
For me, I did not know any engineers in my family or family friends. I had no idea what engineering was. It wasn't until my junior year in high school that Bechtel Corporation came to my high school and they gave a presentation. And I went to that, and I was the only female there. And the guy pulled me aside after the presentation, and he said, if you're really interested in engineering, you should really pursue it. Not many women are in that field. And if you like math and science, there's so many opportunities. And I always loved math and science, and I thought this would be a great career for me. And I really liked it because I was particularly interested in mechanical engineering, because the way Bechtel presented it, it was like you could do anything from designing roller coasters to designing a mechanical pencil. So there's like such a wide range of what you could do with that degree.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Mechanical engineering, for me, because I always liked like pulling things apart and putting them together. My mom would sign me up to make the bookcases or whatever we were pulling, like entertainment centers that we were buying. She just like told me to make them. I guess she realized that I like that stuff. But then like the perk was that for mechanical engineering, you need mechanical engineering for almost every single thing, from building a chair to an airplane to a faucet, gas valves, thermostats, all things that, you know, basically those last things I've worked on. So they're very generically useful
Mhm.
for sure.
So like during high school or even middle school, did you ever kind of explore STEM through classes that were offered? Were those offered? Either of you
At,
can go.
at
You
my
can go.
school, they were not offered. I went to a private high school, but I feel like back at that time, it was not like there weren't a lot of extra electives and things like that to be offered. So no, at my high school, we never had that. Middle school either. So
Yeah, for me, the only thing that I took that were semi-related were like that we had a wood shop class in junior high, so
mhm,
I jumped on that and I was like
mhm,
building things there. That was the only class that they had where it was like actually building something. And then in high school, the only elective that I took, I thought I wanted to be an architect, so that we actually did have an elective for architecture. So I did do that, and then they had a career day where we shadowed an architect for a day, and I realized I didn't want to do architecture because it's like being an artist. It's like really like start just doing drafting, um,
yeah,
doing what the main architect tells you to do, and then it's really hard to build your own career in that.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
It's interesting because for Kayla and I, all throughout high school and middle school, well, less in middle school, but we have had the opportunity to kind of like explore our interest in
Mhm,
STEM with like so many
Definitely.
classes. I'm in Mrs. Clark's computer science class. I was in
mhm,
the one that Mr. Hempel ran my sophomore year. And so I just think it's so interesting because now we can definitely tell that more girls and more people in general are just getting interested, especially because
definitely.
there's like extracurriculars now that we can
Mhm,
participate outside of school. So I just think that
Mhm.
that was interesting.
It's
Um,
great. Yeah, like this group you have right now, this STEM group that you have for women, I think it's awesome. I would
mhm,
have loved that as a high schooler. I never had it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think just in general, not just for women, but in general, they just were not offered so much.
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
So it's really good we have that.
All right, so now I want to touch for this next question. I want to touch on a topic that's like personally just the bane of my existence, and I'm sure it applies to like many other people too. But when it comes time to apply for jobs or internships, the question of, do you have any work experience, do you have any work experience in general or in the field specifically, always pops up. So can you give us, as well as everybody watching, advice on working around the question, especially when you can't even seem to like get work experience in the first place?
I would say how you would reroute the question, like if it's on in person. I wouldn't say I don't have any work experience and then stop. What I would say is, you know what, I don't have formal work experience, but these are the projects I've done. You know, I've done the CSI project. I did this really special project in my science class. I did, you know, I was in this club, you know, the Women in STEM Club, and we did these sort of outreach kind of projects. And I organized. I was the club, you know, vice president in charge of such and such and such and such. I would kind of redirect the question a little bit to those like experiences that you have that are similar to work experience that show that you shine, that you have, you know, these extra skills and ambition, you know.
Yeah, so they're similar to what I was going to recommend. I was recently interviewed two young professionals that recently graduated from college last week, and they don't have very much work experience at all, but we're really looking for their potential and if they're high potential and how they think. So I was asking them a lot of questions like, if you had this problem, hypothetical questions, like if you had this problem, how would you solve it? So I wanted to know like what steps they would take. So I would do research on the company and see what kind of problems or projects they may have and relate that to a project that you've done, and say like, and show them that you have worked on teams, you've worked with, different areas, whether it's like an electrical engineer, and done a project management type of a project, and you can relate how it relates to the experience that they're looking for.
I totally agree with the doing your research on the companies that you're applying to, and then you can kind of work in, and they have like keywords in their mission statements and things like that. And you can kind of feed it back to them, and then they're going to go, oh, and they could say in their description, oh, we need a people-oriented person. Just say, I'm really good at like making connections and working with people and just, figuring out what needs to be done, that's a really good point.
Yeah, 'cause a lot of the projects you work on in school, the project assignments that you have are very similar to working on a team in the work environment. So you're just making that correlation for the person that's interviewing you.
Yeah.
Kind of going off of that, what do you personally look for when you're looking for someone, whether to fill a position or an internship?
For me, I'm really looking for someone who has high potential and who's ambitious. I look for somebody who kind of goes above and beyond, and who has shown that, like, they don't just do the bare minimum of whatever is required, whether it's at school or in a position. So I like that really stands out to me when I see like they've taken this initiative to like submit this idea, like they had this great idea, so they like built the prototype, and they, like someone that we just interviewed, she submitted an idea to Mattel out of like, they don't know who she is at all, but she made this whole patent submission and submitted it to them. So like that makes them really stand out, that they are somebody that goes above and beyond the mainstream or the rest of the group.
Yeah, and I would say in addition, just having somebody who is like presents himself with confidence and not seeming really insecure or uncomfortable, and somebody who is very social and can be able to discuss things and be friendly. I would say also something that has really helped me from the interviewee side is when you ask questions about the company. So not only you're just there to answer questions, but you're there to interview them a little bit too, because you want to figure out if this is a good company to be at. So just because it's prestigious doesn't mean it's a great company to work at. And maybe it doesn't have like a great, attitude for other things. But one of the questions that has always served me well is like, well, what's the plan? What's the company goal for the next 5 years? What is the company's goal? What are their priorities, that you guys are working for? And then that way it shows them that you're looking at big picture, you're interested in the company beyond the next year or two, but then also then you can cater your answers to that priority that they have.
And I think another good thing to show, that you've done the research on the company, what kind of products they do. So you, a lot of times if they ask you a question, you have no idea what they do, that's a big turnoff. But having done that research and then asking them a career growth path for you in that role, that you're not just looking for that entry role, but where does it lead from there? It shows that you're looking, again, like Joan said, long term.
Absolutely. And this kind of maybe rolls into a later question, but like letting them know up front that you want to move up, you're interested in growth, not just in, getting your, I don't know, it's not $10 an hour, but whatever it is, so for sure.
I think that like perfectly leads into our next question.
Yeah, it sure does. I bet it does.
So earlier when we introduced the topic of the event, which is getting your foot in the door, I kind of talked about how people can ascend and descend positions of a company, but it's not always linear. It's kind of like moving pieces around a board, like when you play chess. So could we hear either of your experiences or both with either ascending positions at a company or kind of remaining static?
I feel like, okay, so my general approach is that I, especially starting out, I go for experience, companies or job positions that give me the experience that I want to lead me where I want to go rather than money. So I look for things that I've always been very goal focused. Like I've always had like a 5-year plan up until I had kids. I had always had like a 5-year plan, but I definitely, so I always kept my eye on positions that would get me to where I want to go. and rather than the money. And then once you kind of get there, then you can work on the money. But also being very, like we kind of talked about this, but being very open and direct with what it is that you want from your boss as far as your position, so that you are not like kind of overlooked or forgotten about, but just being, hey, this is where I ultimately would like to be, and what can I do to work there, and just kind of being very, just direct about it, and trying to think what else. I don't know what else, Susie, you can.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely don't think you should go for a position just for the money. I've always gone for positions that I'm really interested in the product that we're making. Like I've looked at positions. Maybe some people are passionate about like HVAC systems, but it's not something that I am. So I know like if I was in that role, I could not give it my all. And even they got to a point in aerospace where I wasn't passionate about. I enjoyed the beginning where I was growing and learning, but then I got to a point where I wasn't feeling challenged and I wasn't into it. And I was like, I'm doing them a disservice now. I may be getting a paycheck, maybe doing like going through the motions, but I need to like be fully into it, like heart and soul. So I went to something I was more interested in, like to biomedical and then toys, because I like the creative side. So I think you really should pick something that you feel like in your heart you would be interested in, because going through the day-to-day it'll get old after a while, and I think you wouldn't be happy overall.
Yeah. And I also, anytime that somebody offers you more responsibility, unless it's just like completely, I don't want to say debasing kind of work or something, I would volunteer for it. So anytime they offer you, hey, do you want to work on this project or take on this extra responsibility? Of course I do. Absolutely I do. I'm happy to do whatever needs to be to get done. And it's also a way I noticed to kind of work your way into like different areas. If you want to go into like a different area within the company and you're taking on all these extra responsibilities that are related to it, you start to carve out your niche in the company, your specialty, and it makes you valued. And it makes you feel special too, because you have your special niche, your special skill set that everyone now comes to you for. So definitely kind of like keeping your eye open for opportunities that you weren't necessarily anticipating, but accept the responsibility.
Right? Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I've had examples where within the company, they'll have some initiative on some process improvement or some like conference you can go to. I always sign up for everything that's possible. And that's a great way, like in turn, like networking, getting other people to know you. And then it also, you stand out to management, like, because they're looking at those special projects and those process improvements that's helping the company, whether it would save time or money. And they're like, oh, who was on that team? And it gets your name out there. And it's really great to meet other people from other departments that way. And then another thing I was going to say, just in general, I know I've managed junior engineers, and they're always asking me like, how do I get my work known? How do I get like upper management to realize, to see how great of a job I'm doing? And my advice to them, which has always served me, is just if your work speaks for itself. And if you're just focusing on what you're doing and doing your best and like, getting involved in those other projects, they'll know you. Management will talk about you, and your name will get out there. If you don't have to worry about that, you have to like go to them and show them like, oh, look what I did.
I agree. And I think also is super important is to have a I can do it kind of positive attitude, rather than like you hear people just like ripping each other apart and tearing down and saying like, I can't believe they gave us this project. I can't believe they did this and da 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 da. It's so negative. If you're saying like, all right, bring it on, I'm happy to do it. And like, you know what, there's an obstacle, we'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. This is my plan for figuring it out. So if you have a plan how to address it, rather than like, oh, I don't know, it looks terrible to a boss if you just say, oh, I don't know, but you can say, you know what, we're figuring it out. This is my plan. We're going to go research this. We're going to go figure out this. We're going to talk to these people. And then by such and such a date, I'll have a plan figured out. It's just so much more impressive.
Yeah. Another thing, even with helping other groups that aren't like, they may ask you for help on something that's not part of your job title or your job description. So to not be, I know managers hate hearing like, oh, that's not my job description, or that kind of attitude where like, no, that's not my role. Why would I do that? Like you should have that jump in where and help wherever you can. When you do that, you're a team player, and this
Mhm.
people want to work with you.
Absolutely.
So something that you guys kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to bring attention to it. So when you're kind of asking to, or you're expressing interest in moving up in a company, it's like me personally, I am a very non-confrontational person. The only work experience I have, I worked at Kumon, and I was way too scared to even ask my boss to like turn on the air conditioning. So for someone like me, who's a little bit more on like the timid side, how would you like recommend like going about asking for more and like wanting to do more, wanting to be in a higher position?
So it's all those things that we've been talking about. So it's all those things, but also like, so you come and you interview and you have the conversation about what's the growth opportunities. And this is not like a matter of being like like a jerk or being aggressive or anything like that. This is just like, you know what, what's the growth path for me? And then like keep the conversation coming back to that growth path. Say, you know what, like what can I do? You can post it as a question. It's always good to post things as questions if you're worried that you're going to overstep. But you could say, you know what can I do to like build up my resume or to like create the experience that you need to fill this type of a position. And then that just kind of keeps reminding them that this is what you want. And that, and then of course you have that advice from them. And now you're kind of like their little pet project, right? You're sort of like they want to help you do that now that you kind of communicate to them and you're asking them for advice, you're seeking advice from them. Definitely just keep that conversation going, I think.
Yeah, I've had some managers that don't. It's like in the beginning, I've always had managers, like sometimes they'll have weekly one-on-ones with me. And then I've moved companies and where my new manager, like they'll never schedule a one-on-one. So I'll schedule the one-on-one with them, even though it's not something that they normally do.
Mhm.
I'll just ask them, can I have one-on-ones with you on a regular basis? So we'll work that out, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, and then just bring up those questions then. That's the easiest time one-on-one. And then ask them,
Mhm.
like, tell them where you want to get to and what steps do you need to do to get there, and then keep reminding them, like, so like 3 more months will pass by and check in again, like, we talked about this, do you think I'm improving towards that goal and towards that path? What else can I do to be progressing? And just keep that conversation going.
I'll let
Yeah,
Kayla.
so I think going off of kind of being able to network within the company, I mean, for me personally, it's really hard to kind of cold email people that we've never met before. And it's really hard to connect to professionals that may seem uninterested in taking on specifically student volunteers, researchers, or interns, or even if you're new to the company. So we wanted to ask what your best tip for networking is.
I think my best tip for networking is like basically what you're doing right now. So, you know what? You make friends, get good at making friends and keeping connections with them, right? Susie and I have been friends for like 21 years or something like that, right? 22 years, maybe 1999, I think. So we have been friends for that long, and but that was easy. Susie was easy, but just keep contact with people, just make friends and be supportive and friendly. Don't be critical, and then just like what you did for this CSI project, just ask anybody that you can think of. Do you know anybody? Do you know anybody at this company or any companies that I can apply to? Ask and touch base with anybody, your friends, dads, or whatever, maybe they work somewhere. Networking within the company, definitely, make friends with people at the company, go out to lunch, ask, hey, let's go out to lunch. Are you guys interested in Chinese food or whatever? Just, let's go do it, check out the area and just kind of make friends really. And then your positive attitude and making friends, I think, it'll kind of happen even more naturally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very similar advice I was going to give. I never like intentionally worked on it, but it just happened by just making friends and being social, going to any social events that are happening, you know, within the company or at school or anything like that. Just take advantage of it. Go to all the Christmas parties. If they're having like a summer work picnic, go to those, anything. And there's times where I like didn't know any friends and I was on the shy side, and like I would see two women engineers eating lunch together, and like one time I just walked up to them and I was like, can I eat with you guys? And since then like it built a lifelong friendship. So it's like, don't be afraid to like just go out there and approach people and ask them to lunch, and just do as many as, if there's any social events that you're invited to, say yes and then just go to those. And that's the best way. And like Joan said too, with making connections with anybody that you know, like family, teachers, or friends of family, if they might know an engineer, and where you can get, having someone recommend you within the company is a great way to get your foot in the
It's
door to get an internship.
definitely one of the easier ways to be seen, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that was the last question for our interview portion. So Ria, if you want to take away the Q&A portion.
Really quickly, there is another question. So I will just read that. So this directly ties into what this whole project is about. So I'm sure we all know that while it's getting more common as time goes on, it's still relatively uncommon to see a woman in an executive role of a company. So, especially those in like STEM industries, STEM fields, how do you think that being a woman affected your experience when it came to progressing further in terms of your career or even just like your education? So, in school, in college, things like that. Um, so Susie, do you mind going first with that one?
Sure. No. I think it depends on the environment, the culture of the company, and where you're at. I think I have experienced both sides of it. Or like my first company, when I was in the first R&D department, I was told by my boss and other people right away that our VP of engineering did not think women should be engineers. And like whenever I passed him in the hallway, he'd look away and wouldn't give me eye contact. So that was like really shocking to me, because that was my first job out of college. But then as I went into other groups there, and even in college, there was always like at least 2 or 3 other women engineers, and I would be friends with them for sure right away. But then there's also a lot of men who respected us and who valued our opinions. So we would like study with them or get to know them and be friends with them, because I think there are a lot of people without that mindset who can be advocates for you. So I think just trying to make those connections with those people. And like at my current company, and I know like the 2 young female engineers we interviewed last week, they were really surprised that we have a ton of female engineers in our group, and our VP of engineering is a woman, my director is a woman, and all the way like my manager is a woman. So like all 3 levels above me are all women in engineering, which is really rare. And we also have a ton of women. So I think um, I think that's just a company culture kind of a thing. So I think looking at the company and how their structure is, it can kind of tell you like maybe where they may lie, maybe a little bit harder in some companies than others to like progress because of being a woman.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm just going to talk about the education first, because that's easy. But the education, I didn't feel like any issues really, because it was a lot of other young people with me, going to college. The interesting thing is that I was like a rock star, though. I didn't know all these people, but they all knew me. For some reason, they all knew my name, because there's only 5% female in our school. So I'd be the only girl in the class of 20, but but that was fun. But anyways, as far as job, I had a lot of varied experience. I never had an experience where there were like as many as Susie is saying at her company. If you find that, keep that. But for sure. But no, the first couple of companies I worked at were very, I would say, old school engineering companies, and that was pretty. It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. And I would say on those companies, probably you need to think about your mental well-being. So if you're in one of those companies where like the first company I was in, it was like they had been shut away for 30 years. It was an old company and the same guys worked there for 30 years. So it's like being in a locker room for 30 years with the same guys. And then all of a sudden I come in and they're going like, they're still making their little comments and like, doing all sorts of inappropriate stuff. And that was very stressful. But in that company, somebody actually, well, so there was a lot of issues and they were there. Somebody else reported how they were treating me or acting around me. Because things had happened that were not appropriate, like it consistently. And so one person left, and so they gave me a promotion right away. I think to kind of like, okay, we're not being sexist, so that, but I didn't last long there because I wanted to get the heck out of there. That was really stressful. And it's just, honestly, if you're in that kind of position, you should not try and feel like you need to like change the culture. You need to just get out. And then I had one company where the manager, we went to South Korea and the manager was passing out business cards for the prostitution house or whatever, and had me passing them around. It was just terrible. So I ended up leaving that company too. And then I came to Medtronic Mini-Med, where actually I met Susie. And that was a much more forward, modern company. It was much better. I mean, it was, as far as moving around within the company as a female, there's still, even though it's a much more forward thinking company and modern company, there's still like, you get into a conference room and people don't hear women talking as much. They clue in on the men talking. And sometimes even as a female, we do it. I noticed that like they speak more confidently, they speak over other people. And so even as a woman, I had to concentrate on like, sometimes I feel like Susie and I would be across the table from each other having a conversation. They're having a completely different conversation, But so there's definitely challenges there. I agree. I would, think about the company I'm in and the culture that is there for your own progression, definitely want a more modern, forward thinking company.
Yeah. And I was also going to mention if there are any other women like to try, even if it's not a woman in engineering, but maybe she's in a different area, try to get a mentorship going, even if they don't have an official mentorship program at the company. Go up to somebody that you respect and ask them if they would be your mentor, because then they can help you work through those difficult situations too.
Right, I agree. That's a good one.
It was interesting what you mentioned, Mrs. Clark, where you said if you're ever in that situation to not feel like you have to change the culture. I think that that's so interesting because I feel like that pressure is there like constantly. So, well,
yeah, there's definitely pressure to feel like, you know what, you need to stand your ground and you need to forge the way ahead. But you know what, you also have to think about your own well-being. And you're not going to change a culture like that. You have to work on a manageable piece. I was coming home. I don't know how like detailed, but I was coming home every day throwing up because it was so stressful, and it's just like, you shouldn't put yourself through that. And that's when I kind of figured out, you know what, I just need to be in a more modern company.
I mean, I think that's really interesting too, like how you really shouldn't, you need to put your well-being first instead of changing the company. So, I mean, I'm sure, at least for me, I know it would take a while for me to reach that mindset. So do you have any advice for a woman, like a female professional in a STEM career that may feel like they need to change their world around them instead of prioritizing themselves and their well-being first?
Well, I feel like that's it basically. At that company, let's see, I'm trying to think. At that company, what happened is, so somebody else reported what was going on. But the reason why you don't feel comfortable reporting it is because, first of all, you're the only female there, right? And so they're all going to close ranks. I felt that they're all going to close ranks, and I'm going to be the jerk that's reporting our friend here, and I'm going to be the one that's going to be like ostracized, right? And that actually is kind of what happened. So somebody else, another manager, I was just talking to, and I wasn't like reporting it or anything. I was just talking about saying, oh my gosh, this situation is like, we were just out to lunch, is making me so sick and all. And then he said, well, I'm sorry, I got to report it. And so he did. And then it just like, it tore up our whole department. And, but they all, by the way, know what was going on. They're there and they see it, and they're just all part of that culture, and they're used to it. And so they know as soon as that happened, they knew it was true. I mean, they didn't think that I made up stories or anything, but it was just, I was the jerk for reporting it. And then when they found out that I didn't actually report it, it was better. But, like, I don't know, who wants to be in that position? So that's why I think like it's better not to, if that culture is so far out of whack, it's not worth it to you, because you're not going to change everyone at that company. And you reporting it is going to make you like the jerk, and yes, you definitely should report things, but, protect yourself. Protect yourself.
I think that's interesting. So, that like really childish bystander kind of mindset.
Mhm.
It's, you see it in elementary school, middle school, between little kids. And so like to hear that it's still happening in companies, it's kind of shocking, but also I'm sure for both of you who have been working in companies, it's something that happens often. But I'm sure with like what you've just shared, we all know now, you can't necessarily just sit there and listen to someone having a hard time. It's better to
Yeah.
speak up.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So that actually concludes the interview round of the event. So I just want to say thank you to all the panelists for their insight and their flexibility when it came to answering the questions. I'm sure I wasn't the only one who enjoyed it, but now I just want to address everything that's come through in the attendee Q&A box. So I will start with a question. They're all anonymous, so apologies for not mentioning a specific name. But let me read this verbatim. You said there is a large variety of things you can do with a mechanical engineering degree. What made you choose the specific engineering field you're in now?
Susie, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, I chose mechanical engineering because of all the different ways, different kinds of products that you can produce with mechanical engineering, from something very simple like Jenna, like you can do like furniture to something very complicated to like working in aerospace and building satellites, so something very high tech. So I really like the variety of what's available in mechanical engineering and what the broad scope. So that's why I chose mechanical engineering, and I'm really glad I did. It's also just kind of the way my mind works. It's more visual. So I feel like with electrical engineering, software engineering, that's just wasn't for me, because it's like with the numbers and like I couldn't visualize it. I couldn't see what's going on electrically in something, or the software part of it. It wasn't like my strength. So that's why I chose mechanical engineering.
Great. So, Mrs. Clark, do you want to answer that question as well?
Well, for me, it wasn't like really even a contest. I just was born to be a mechanical engineer, and I knew it. I love tearing things apart, putting them together, so, and of course I did think about like the pros and cons of mechanical versus electrical and stuff like that, but it was already kind of a done deal for me.
All right. So the next question we have is, do you experience resistance when you're leading men? How should I go about it?
Susie, do you want to take that first?
You can go first. I'm trying to think of an example.
I would say absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. You know what? You just pretend like it doesn't exist, and you just you are direct. You're honest. You tell them what you need. Tell them what they need to do, just like you would, just like any manager would. You can see that they are feeling a little bit like tweaked or whatever, but you know what? That's their situation to deal with. That's not yours. You just need to make sure that you are being professional, and that you're being direct, and just, don't start hedging and being soft spoken and like, oh, I need to tiptoe around this person, because that just undermines your ability to lead.
Yeah, I agree. I think I haven't experienced so much as a direct report to me, but working with other male engineers, and especially from other cultures. Like I've worked with men in Italy and in like China and overseas, and I feel like their culture is not as receptive to women engineers. So I felt like there was a lot of resistance in the beginning when I worked with them, and it's just like proving yourself and like having confidence in yourself. And like I think in the beginning they're like, oh, like who she doesn't know anything, or she's a young girl, like, you know, they're not going to listen to me. But I think just proving yourself, standing your ground, doing like your best work, and then they will build that confidence and trust in you, and then you break that barrier.
Something I actually embarrassingly got from a TikTok video that someone posted. So they were talking about how they were like a female student who was majoring in computer science. And when they were kind of describing the climate inside of the classroom, uh, advice that she shared in this video was that when you speak with someone about maybe an issue you're having, maybe there's like a bug in your code, um, you're supposed to speak as if you know how to solve it, but you just need help getting there, as opposed to being like, I don't know how to do this. So the something that she like what she explicitly said was she said, oh, I don't know how to do this, but I'm sure I could like learn. I'm sure I could learn how to do it. Do you think that like have you ever like practiced like talking like that or speaking like that? Because I know that that's
So,
definitely not how I speak, but I can see how it would be effective.
so I don't know that I say I a lot. I try to, and I know that Susie is the same way, but you speak to the problem and you speak analytically. You don't make it personal. And you say, you know, okay, so this is the situation. This is, you know, we could do this, we could do that. Do you have any thoughts? You know, kind of like make it not personal, you know, dissect the problem and discuss, you know, how you can go about solving it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point for Joan. And then there's been times where like I'll be asked a question, or like you're giving a presentation and someone will ask you a question, you don't know the answer on the spot. So a lot of times we'll just be like, I don't, just be honest, and they'll trust you more. Just be like, I don't know the answer to that right now, but I will look into it and I'll get back to you.
Yeah,
Follow up.
that's a real common answer. The other thing is, because I was talking about not saying I too much, but the other thing is when you do accomplishments, it's okay to say, you know what, I was able to solve this problem, or I was, because that gives you the credit, whereas men will talk like that all the time. You know, we are more hesitant. We like to spread the, I don't know, spread the, what do I want to say? The kind of the glory around. We like to like compliment everybody else and blah, 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 blah. And then we don't ever say anything about what we did, you know? And so, you know, don't be afraid to just say, oh yay, look, I figured it out, or look at this is awesome, I was able to solve this problem. You know, don't be afraid to just, you know, be honest. You're not like overextending, but just say, hey, you know, look what I did.
Yeah, definitely agree.
I have to keep that in mind. I have to start exercising that more. Okay, so another question that was sent in was, who inspires you and why?
Well, so my dad probably started me on the path. So this is probably where I get my engineering gene from, is because my dad and his twin brother were both engineers. And actually my grandpa on my mom's side was also kind of like very mechanical, pulling, you know, doing things. But I think who I'm most inspired by are more of my peer female engineers. You know, that's where you just get like the extra pump of energy, because you can see all the great things that they are doing, and you know the accomplishments they are making, and it kind of like gets you excited. You know, it just gets you real pumped up and excited.
Yeah, I agree with Joan. It's more of the people I've known and met along the way, and it's always been people who want to extend themselves and teach
Mhm.
others and pass on what they've learned. So those are the people
Mhm.
who've inspired me the most. And
Mhm.
like I've worked with like someone recently when I was out working as a teaching in a STEM lab at my um, at the nonprofit art school. The founder of that, I work side by side with the founder there, and he really inspired me because he was really a great artist, but he wanted to pass that on and to help underprivileged
Mhm.
students who didn't have access to art programs. So he
Mhm.
like started this career. It wasn't about money or anything. He just saw a need and he wanted to help others. So like people who want to help others, whether it's like even within a company, like you don't even if your company directly doesn't help um, somebody, that was a direct help. But even if your company, you're helping people who are helping within their company, we're helping, people around them, people who have that kind of a attitude, like want thinking about others first, I guess.
So I am personally really interested in the STEAM lab. So Susie, would you mind speaking more about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I left the corporate world for a couple of years as I did want to give back and help underprivileged students who didn't have. I discovered this art school downtown, which was a nonprofit art school where they bus in kids from LA who don't have art programs at their school. So they had like state of the art equipment and classes of art teachers who are professionals who would give them courses like it was like a whole semester long. And so I really wanted to be part of that. So I left the corporate world and taught there for a couple of years. And I really enjoyed it because it was great to have the corporate experience, but then be a teacher so I could share to the students like what it means to be an engineer and how to, apply to college and how to get into a corporation and talk from that experience and talk about like how to build a project from start to finish and what kind of things are taken into account where maybe like some of the other teachers did not have that corporate experience or working in a company, so they weren't able to share that part of it.
Great, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
really fun. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities like that too. If you don't want to like work for a company, but you want to go straight into education with engineering, there's lots of different variety of opportunities there.
Wow,
Mm.
thank you. So
Sure.
our last question in the Q&A section so far, keep putting in your questions if you have them. So the question asks, what do you think is the most significant barrier in getting your foot through the door?
Hmm. Through the door into like a new company, or to the profession, or
They didn't specify, so I would just say in general.
um, uh, but probably just your first job, probably like the first entry, getting your first job experience is probably the hardest thing just to get going. Right. I would say that was probably the hardest thing to get going. And then maybe like having, for me personally, having the perspective, the big picture perspective that, you know what, this company is terrible. I need to just, I know there are better companies out there. I'm going to keep looking, not getting discouraged. I interviewed at like so many interviews. I just want to tell you this so you don't get discouraged, but I did so many interviews where I realized really quickly that they were not looking for a female in the position. Like one guy I interviewed for an oil company, and he said right away, he said, "Oh, are you like one of those people that has the little lacy gloves and then can't get in there and get dirty?" And like, we had an employee like that before. And then, you know what, you just need to say next, because you're not going to get that job anyways, right? So don't take it personal. Do not take it personal. Just keep going. Put it in the tail lights, the rearview mirror.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to like don't give up because you can go through so many interviews before you find the right job. So just like not giving up, being persistent. And I think the best way to get your foot in the door is to get any kind of experience, whatever it is. Like while you're in college, be as resourceful as you can. Like to go to the career center, go to every career event that there is, and just try to get any kind of internship at all that you can is really helpful. Just to show that you have some kind of internship experience, that is a really great way to get your first job. To have
Yeah, I think too, I think it's really important to think of it as that you are like carving out your niche. Like you are making it what you want it to be. You don't need to think that like you're just taking it as it comes at you. You're developing what you want your career to be, and then you will like kind of like work your way into the spots that you want to be in.
hmm Yeah, do your research. Like I had gone from aerospace to medical devices to toys, and when I went from, I was just thinking in myself, like aerospace, my husband's still in the same aerospace company that we met in like 20 years later, but that's him, that he loves doing that. Whereas for me, I wanted to be more creative. I wanted to see the final product where I could like see it working, and seeing someone using it is really rewarding to me. And then I also like working with kids, so then I wanted to work in toys. So I didn't even know anybody at Mattel or anything, but I thought, I always thought Mattel seemed like a cool company to work at, and so I just went to their website. I didn't see them listing on any of the like job recruiting sites, but I went to their specific website and looked for openings and waited, and when I saw the opening popped up, and I jumped on it. So I think go and target the companies that you're really interested in, go to their websites, find the HR person, contact that person directly, even if you don't see a job listing that exactly matches your qualifications. Just get your name out there, let them know that you're really interested in that company.
I agree. Don't wait for the job opening to be posted. Start working the situation beforehand. That's what I say, because once it's open, how many people are going to be applying already? If you have a connection or a person in there, even if it's HR, that's a help.
All right. Something that Ava asked was, how was your experience with engineering classes in college?
Engineering classes in colleges. It was fine. I mean, I enjoyed it. I'm not sure if you're thinking from like, was it challenging as being a female or just being engineering? But I feel like engineering is something that you can work hard and you can be successful at. Like, I don't think you have to be like naturally a straight A type of a person, but I feel like I just work really hard. I'm intelligent, but I wasn't like, I did honors and AP classes, but not all AP classes. And I think that I just have a really good work ethic, and that was important for getting through college.
Yeah, same with me. Like people like will say like, "Oh, you're an engineer, you're so smart." I'm like, "No, I don't really consider myself that smart. I worked hard, and I would like not give up, and I really put the work into it." And I was not in honors or AP classes in high school, but and then once I got to high school, it was really important for me to build a network right away. Luckily I was at UCLA, and they had a society for Latino engineers and scientists, so I joined that group right away, and they were great because they had a counselor that helped us like sign up for our classes and map our whole 4 years out. And then I got to meet other engineering students, and we would always like, we had our group of like 10 of us who would go and we would study together all the time. So it really helped to have that group that I could study together with or ask questions to whenever anything came up, because classes are so large, you're going to need to find like a core smaller group to study with and connect with.
I agree. And then also the other thing is that the good thing about college is you can pace it out. It's not like high school, and it's not like work. You can pace it out. You can take fewer classes if you want, if you need to take some of the load off. And so, don't be afraid to do that. Like it took me, well, engineering is intense, but it took me 5 years to get through my engineering courses, and that's fine. And I was going to summer school and stuff like that, but I was also working 20 hours a week in an engineering company. Actually, that was another good thing. Actually, as soon as you can get a job interning or working at an engineering company or whatever it is that you're interested in college, do it, because the sooner you get the experience, when you graduate, you're going to have that experience on your resume.
Yeah, same with me. I was working part-time while I was going engineering, and it helped to I didn't want to take 4 classes a semester. I took 3 because I
Mhm,
couldn't do all of it at once,
mhm,
and
mhm,
it took me longer to graduate. But it's like doesn't make any difference once you graduate. Like you'll be working for the next, I don't know how many years,
mhm.
40
Yeah.
years. So you're no rush. That extra year is not going to make a difference in the long run. And I actually even took a year off in college, not off, but within the program. I went to and studied in Spain for a year, and I didn't take any engineering classes that whole year, so it took me
Mhm,
longer to graduate.
mhm.
But it was so worth it. I would have not never have changed my mind on that. No
And the
idea.
other thing is, remember, you don't even have to like me and Susie. Susie, actually, we both changed careers. So, and Susie's changed careers multiple times. So, don't feel like you have to have a 40-year commitment to one thing, right? You're allowed to change it up, but if you have that degree, it's probably easier to change to something else also.
Mhm.
Okay, so our last question for today is from, I apologize if I say your name wrong, Malar. So they are asking, how do you balance your work and family life?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think you just have to, it's a constant balancing act. Because I do like tend to want to do everything. Like you see here I am volunteering more hours, right? So I do tend to want to do everything. And I want to do like a lot of, new things. And like right now I'm working on robotics club and maybe a robotics class, so it is like a constant just balancing act. You have to kind of be very self-aware and make sure that you have time for yourself to go exercise or whatever you need to do, veg out, work on the house, be with the kids, be with the family, and just it's just constantly being self-aware, I think, and tuned into what's going on with yourself. Not trying not to overextend yourself.
Yeah, I think you just have to set those boundaries for you, because if the company will try to suck as much as they can out of you, and like they will, if you'll work to 10 o'clock every night, they'll take it. Like, so you just have to
For
really
sure.
be intentional and be like, no, I am logging off at 6, and don't check your email, don't check your messages. And your boss or anybody will know. They, like for us, that we all have each other's personal cell phone numbers. So if there's an emergency, I know they'll text me or call me if they
Mhm,
need to. But in most cases they don't need to, they can wait till the next day. So I have to intentionally like draw that line for myself and not feel guilty about it, because sometimes I leave the office and everyone's still there and I'm like, I have to run off and go pick up my daughter at school, and then I feel guilty inside. I just have to
mhm,
like get over that and be like, no, I know I worked, I like did not fool around all day, I worked really hard all day. And sometimes if I have to like make up something at night after my daughter goes to sleep, I will like work another hour or so if I have to like catch up on an email, but try not to. But I know like try it's really helpful to find a workplace that it will be flexible with you. That really helps if you want to have a family and kids, then like with the child care situation, a more flexible, and like Joan said, a modern company will be flexible with you. But in general, yeah, just make those boundaries and don't feel guilty about it.
mhm.
Okay, thank you both for your wonderful answers. I'm sure our audience enjoyed it. Both of us enjoyed it as well. So, to close day one, I'd like to thank Mrs. Clark once again for all of her help with this project, as well as Mrs. Buckman for taking the time to attend and educate us as a panelist. And to everyone who showed today, thank you so much for attending. We hope you enjoyed it.